That time, young Vegeta was reincarnated as a panther in the Bleachverse. Or at least that's what I'd like to say. But Grimmjow isn't a deuteragonist. He isn't even Ichigo's biggest rival. No, that'd be Uryu. Although he's still an astounding character that bears striking similarities with our good old Ichigo, and while that may have initially confused us into thinking that he'll become a constant buddy later on, that's ultimately not how it goes. This man, Grimmjow, is built like an antagonist through and through. He's rebellious, cocky, and psychotic. He doesn't flinch in the face of authority, and goes around claiming to be the king. Naturally, when you have a character who's like the protagonist, but also someone who cannot contain the silly urge to destroy, that character is going to have a massive fanbase. Such is the case with Grimmjow. His character design also goes hard, by the way. And well, as for this video, we'll be going over the story of this man. His beginning, his growth, all the way down to the end of the story. Back when he had finally evolved into an Ajuchus from a Jillian, or should I say back when he was a panther, he made a few friends who respected his strength, and asked him to be their king. Everyone's goal was to eventually ascend to the next stage and become Vasto Lorde. But even when they tried so hard and got so far, his companions wondered if it even matters. Just like that, they no longer sought evolution. They had already consumed thousands of hollows, and still didn't notice a big difference. And so they've become content with the notion that they will always be just Ajuchas. Now, weakness disgusted our panther, and so he calls them all cowards. However, in response, his friends tell him that they knew from the beginning how he'll be the only one who evolves into Vasto Lorde. The idea here is that one can't become a Vasto Lorde simply by consuming others. Rather, it's predestined. Grimmjow was destined to be one, while his companions were not. This was the beginning of Grimmjow. He eventually became a Vasto Lorde, then an Arrancar. Throughout it all, he was constantly facing the danger of devolution, and so he started believing himself to be the strongest. He simply believed that he was entitled to greatness. During the events of the Arrancar arc, when he is first introduced, we see him reprimanding Ulquiorra for not killing Ichigo. Here, Grimmjow had the idea that Ichigo could become far more powerful in the future. He'll eventually be a real threat. Ulquiorra explained that Aizen can use Ichigo's growth to their advantage and make him one of his pawns. But of course, if he does become a threat, they can just kill him then. Grimmjow wasn't a big fan of this reasoning, and so in order to correct Ulquiorra's mistake, he takes it upon himself to go and kill Ichigo. Rukia and Ichigo have a face-off against one of his subordinates. She kills him, and then Grimmjow himself appears. He introduces himself as the 6th of the Arrancars, also referred to as the 10 Espada. As you all know, each of the Espada holds dominion over a different form of death, and in Grimmjow's case, it's destruction. He asks the two about who is the strongest. Rukia quickly tells Ichigo to get back, but he's too fast. He had already pierced her stomach before she knew it. This means she's not the stronger one of the two. It also meant that Ichigo now has the motivation to cut to the chase and fight Grimmjow. He is severely outmatched. Ichigo, I mean. The battle essentially starts with Grimmjow toying with him. Even when Ichigo uses his Bankai, he still fails to gain an edge over the fight. However, when Ichigo catches him off guard, thanks to his Getsuga Tensho, Grimmjow is impressed. His torso has been permanently scarred. It's hollow now. He realizes that Ichigo is finally worth killing. Now we're serious. Grimmjow acknowledges Ichigo and brings out his Zanpakuto to end things in a cinematic manner. However, Kaname Tosen pops up and stops him. This was extremely unpleasant for Grimmjow, but when he is told how his selfish actions resulted in the deaths of 5 Arrancar, he still does not care. Or that's what I'd like to say, but when Tosen mentions Aizen's anger, Grimmjow has no choice but to comply. Although as he was on his way back, Ichigo firmly declares that their fight isn't over yet. In reply, Grimmjow tells him his name, and states that if he ever hears it again, it'll be the last thing he hears. Grimmjow is then taken to be punished. Aizen isn't particularly psyched about punishing the guy. Kaname Tosen inflicts the punishment himself by severing the guy's left arm. This infuriates Grimmjow. He's ready to return the favor only to be stopped by Aizen. If he were to proceed and attack Tosen, Aizen won't excuse that. Clearly, if there is one guy Grimmjow actually respects, then that's Aizen. He sucks it up and leaves. Then an entire month later, Aizen sends him on an invasion. One thing leads to another, and he faces off against Ichigo again. Ichigo seems awfully confident this time. He's itching to show all the progress he made this past month. There's a little bit of trash talk. Ichigo also asks him about his arm and what happened, to which Grimmjow replies that he just threw it away because he doesn't need 2 arms to kill him. The fight begins. Ichigo shows off his hollowification and lands some solid attacks on Grimmjow. Grimmjow is quite surprised by this reveal. Just what has Ichigo been doing in the past month? Ichigo definitely had the edge in the beginning, but when Grimmjow breaks his mask, the power dynamic suddenly shifts. Rukia then enters the chat, freezes him, and then goes to help Ichigo, but the man breaks free and mocks her for underestimating him so much. Shinji then shows up to save Rukia, and while Grimmjow does fight Shinji, Ulquiorra ultimately appears and forcibly takes him back. The fight between Ichigo and Grimmjow is exhilarating. It was evident that both fighters had mutual appreciation for one another in some way or form. Even the way they smirked was similar. As for Grimmjow's story, we then enter the Hueco Mundo arc. Aizen makes Orihime use her powers to restore Grimmjow's arm, since she was in their custody and all. She revives his Espada tattoo as well. The man then proceeds to make short work of Luppy Antenor. He kills her and regains his rank as the 6th Espada. Following this, Aizen calls for a meeting and explains that Ichigo Kurosaki, Uryu Ishida, and Yasutora Sato have invaded them. Of course, Grimmjow wants to fight Ichigo again, which is why he tries to head out, but he's forcibly stopped by Aizen. Aizen wants everyone to wait for them to come here. Subsequently, Grimmjow learns about how Ulquiorra has already defeated Ichigo. He quickly goes to Orihime's room. 2 girls were keeping an eye on her. He kills one and rips off the other's leg. In doing so, he had essentially freed Orihime. He knew what he was doing though. They go to Ichigo where he asks Orihime to quickly heal the protagonist. She allegedly does that, but Grimmjow wants him fully recovered at his 100%. Only then will he be satisfied because in his head, Grimmjow is stronger than Ulquiorra. But since Orihime knows that he's just going to fight her guy again, she doesn't want to fully revive him. Ulquiorra himself pops up and asks him about what's going on. He wants Grimmjow to hand Orihime back to him, but Grimmjow remains unhinged. This discourse results in a swift battle between Grimmjow and Ulquiorra. Ichigo finally gets up and personally asks Orihime to not only heal him, but also heal Grimmjow considering how he was definitely hurt by Ulquiorra. The 2 men want to fight on equal terms again. Grimmjow is also curious about why he's still here, because if he just wanted Orihime, he could have picked her up and bailed while he had the chance. So Ichigo replies that it's just a fight between a Shinigami and a Hollow. That's all. As a Shinigami, it's his natural instinct to fight a Hollow. The battle progresses rapidly, but while Grimmjow was ruthless, Ichigo had to make sure Orihime stays safe. Ultimately, there was an attack that shifted in her direction, and so he had to use his body to protect her. Soon, Ichigo regains his footing and manages to bring the arrogant Espada to his knees, or so we thought. This momentary pause allows Grimmjow to brutally penetrate Ichigo's stomach. The development itself lights Grimmjow's pride on fire. He brutally lands blows after blows as he continues to insult Ichigo, for even thinking that he's become more powerful than him. However, at least he's finally calling Ichigo by his actual name. But the tide of the fight shifts once again, when Ichigo impales Grimmjow, after declaring that he'll fight and defeat everyone who stands in his way. During this finale, Ichigo essentially spares his life. Unacceptable. Grimmjow tries to attack. He simply cannot acknowledge this defeat, so even though he's no longer able to fight, he still seems like there's some fight left in him. The 5th Espada, Neutra Gilga, appears and attacks him from behind, but he manages to survive that as well. Neutra then tries to kill Grimmjow, but of course Ichigo is there. He saves Grimmjow and leaves. The story then takes us to the 1000-year Blood War arc. The Shinigami could definitely use some help, and so after Ichigo finally defeats Quilgaopi, Grimmjow appears at the scene and saves Kisuke Urahara, Orihime, Sato, and Nell from the now revived Quilgaopi. He's the one who finally kills Quilgaopi. Of course, the help was welcome, but since he still wanted to see Ichigo first and foremost, Urahara tells Orihime and Sato to make sure that he stays away from Ichigo. It does happen though. During Iwaku's invasion of the Soul King Palace, Grimmjow and Ichigo crossed paths. It was about to go down, but the former 3rd Espada stopped it before thrifted in a direction nobody wanted. Grimmjow then starts to fight it out with her, but this is where they face off against the death dealing. Amidst all of it, Ichigo wants to know why Grimmjow is helping them to begin with, and of course it's simply because if the Soul Society gets destroyed, there won't be any Ichigo left for him to defeat. Following this conversation, Grimmjow fights the death dealing, or should we just call him Askin? It's an epic exchange, but Grimmjow ultimately crushes the man's heart in the end. He penetrates the chest twice. He rips out the man's heart and crushes it. He sure loves penetrating people, doesn't he? Then after a gruesome, tiresome, and exhausting exchange, where he even had to be healed by Urahara, Grimmjow finally wins in the end. Yeah, Urahara definitely owes him a rematch with Ichigo. That's basically the gist of the canon material we have on Grimmjow. All in all, I love how Bleach handled Grimmjow's character. In any other anime, he would have turned into an ally, but here he stays true to himself, does whatever he wants, always thinks he's the strongest, takes no shit, etc, etc. This need to prove that he's the strongest, not to others but to himself, comes from his deep-rooted inferiority complex, which just makes sense when you consider where he came from. He maintained an antagonistic role until the final arc. Even then, it was more of a compromise than anything else. Grimmjow definitely saw Ichigo as a rival as the story progressed, and so did Ichigo. I mean, you know what color you get when you invert orange? Blue. If the circumstances of their first meeting were different, these two would have definitely been good bros. Even as enemies, they know how to match each other's vibes. Bleach just has too many characters. Otherwise, I'm sure we would have seen more of him. And with that said, what do you guys think of our boy Grimmjow? As always, go wild in the comments section down below. Destroy that like and subscribe button on Grimmjow's name. Well then, I'll see you guys on my next video.